Hello, and welcome to That Thing I Did for a Year, a podcast where we interview University of Toronto students about interesting experiences they had in a year away from school. My name is Ilya. I'm a fourth-year industrial engineering student here at U of D, and I'll be talking to Olivia today. Behind production is Arkady Hungarotsky, a fourth-year engineering science student and the mastermind behind the operation. So today we're talking to Olivia. Olivia, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a fourth-year mineral engineering student, and I just got back from PUI.
Nice. All right. So before we get into kind of like what you did over PUI, what were some of the things that you were involved in, like either at school or just outside of school, and maybe any like work experiences that you had before you started applying to PUI?
In my first year, I did like class rep stuff for like mineral engineering. I was the MIN board of directors representative on INSHOC for a year. What else did I do? I did this club called the Nova Masters. I was like a vice president of promotions for it. So basically just like recruiting people to a design competition, making a website, that kind of thing. I also worked in research. For one of the summers, I worked with Professor Bibhu Mohanty. He's like a blast specialist professor that works for our department. I did like a 3-month project with him. And then I also worked for Labatt Breweries as a campus ambassador. So I was like recruiting fourth year students to their like graduate program basically.
Right.
But yeah, I always tried to like at least do 1 or 2 things like during the year to like keep me busy and build my resume, I guess.
Right. It seems like you were pretty involved on like the MIN side of things at least.
Yeah.
Like, just like representing the faculty and whatnot. What made you want to go into mineral engineering out of high school?
Yeah. I would say, like, I thought it was interesting that there was travel and that, like, you make a decent amount of money, and it seemed, like, more adventurous, especially because, like, you know, you can be doing rotational work or whatever, and also, like, even when I was younger, like, I didn't want to just, like, sit, like, in an office all day, like, in a cubicle, so I liked how MIN has that, like, interplay of, like, the technical work and also, like, field exposure, so you can spend half your day, like, at the desktop designing something, and the other half of your day, like, underground or open pit or doing exploration or whatever. And yeah, I just think it's cool and it's like very niche. So if you become a technical expert in something, you're like really like a technical expert in something.
Right, and there's more like that field engineering aspect of like actually like being out there and doing stuff.
Yeah, it's cool to like see the work.
Okay, so leading off of that, how did you spend your PUI? Give like a brief rundown of what that looked like.
Okay, so I spent my first 4 months at Detour Gold, which is a gold mining company in Northern Ontario. It's an open pit gold mine, and I worked in the mill, so I was doing metallurgy work. So similar to what like a chemical engineer would do, like in a plant, except with minerals. And that was like a 2-in, 2-out rotation, which was pretty cool. 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out rotation.
What does that mean? Like, what does that look like?
You work for 2 weeks, and you'll do 12-hour days, and you like live on site. They have food for you. There's like a gym. You get bused to and from work, and then you have like your own little like living area or whatever.
Right.
And then I would get like after the 2 weeks, I would get bused to the airport, and then I would fly home, and I'd have 2 weeks off, which is pretty sweet.
That is very, very different from I think like the standard kind of PUI experience.
You would think that it's like very demanding because it's like 12-hour days, but you get really used to it and you get so much done because you have like so much time.
Right, and that's just what you do.
Yeah, and you also get like close with your coworkers, which is nice because like you're working on the same thing together 12 hours a day, like for 2 whole weeks.
So like, you like best be friends with them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. But I had a lot of fun there, and there were lots of other summer students there too, which was nice.
Nice.
And then I had like a month and a half or 2 months where I couldn't find a job.
Right.
Where I like had to decide if I was gonna like go back to school or if I was gonna like be stubborn and still trying to find a job. And I ended up deciding to like still stick it out and try to find something. And I ended up finding a job with AECON mining. So I was working in Fort Mac with them in Alberta, so in the oil sands, and I was a project coordinator, so they had this like heavy earthwork project, and they're basically just moving like a bunch of dirt from one area to another. And I was doing a lot of the tracking for the costs and stuff and sending out reports for that and looking at like equipment productivity. And then I ended up leaving that job after like a month and a half for a job in Manitoba, so all over Canada at this point. And that was with Vale at an underground nickel mine. And I was doing survey and then in my free time, I was doing like more mine planning work and stuff. So trying to get like, you know, a little bit more extra work as much as I could, I guess, in my like co-op term, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that took you to the end of your PEY term?
Yeah. So that was like 7 months, I think, at Vale.
Okay, yeah. Sweet. So it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what you're saying, like you didn't have like the requisite 12 months of work planned out like prior to that.
No. So I had a job offer in September, which I was going to take, but I tried to negotiate a contract with them, and they ended up like cheating me out of it. Like they gave the contract to someone else.
Sure, yeah.
So at that point I was in the mode of planning not to go back to school. So I was like, okay, I can either like go back to school and like do my last year of school, or I can like keep going on the path I'm on and, you know, take like kind of drop out of the formal PY program and then like do it on my own. So that's what I ended up doing.
Okay.
Because the department doesn't let you do like 3 short 4-month things. It has to be like a full 12-month program or job, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so you ended up just like dropping that, and then you were just looking for the jobs kind of on your own.
Yeah, for like a month and a half or something. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you clearly made it work.
I did. I did.
That's awesome. So let's get into that first job that you had, like the one with the 2 in 2 out with.
Yeah.
What was the name of the company again?
Detour Gold.
Detour Gold. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that what you were doing was like metallurgy and was similar to kind of like chem work.
Yeah.
What does a day of that look like?
So basically, I had like 5 research projects that I was doing.
Okay.
And basically like a mill, like it's like a process, right? So you're trying to get like the highest recovery that you can. So the most gold out of like the product that's being sent to the mill with like using the least amount of chemicals or like reagents, like to save on cost. Okay. So it's like this relationship between recovery and cost that you're trying to balance, right? And so I was doing certain research projects that looked at like different factors, like I don't know, like operating parameters in certain parts of the system where you're like, okay, what's the optimal pressure and I don't know, density and all these different things that will give me the best particle size. Because if you have like a smaller particle size, you might get better recovery. Like there's like, I guess you're like balancing factors. So a lot of what I was doing was like sampling. Like in the mornings I would go and sample for my various research projects, and then I would get the data back from analysis. Maybe I would work in the lab to do some analysis and stuff. And then I would do some analysis in like Minitab. It's like a data analysis software. And then I don't know. That's basically what I would do all day. And then like at the end, like I made a report and stuff for that.
Okay, gotcha. So there was this like big like gold procurement process, and you were trying to just make it more effective.
Yeah. So they had basically like the chief metallurgist had this idea that, oh, maybe if we do this, the process will be more efficient. So I want you to look into this and tell me, you know, if we adjust this factor, how much better will our process be, and like how does that relate to our costs and our overall, like the overall process has so many steps, right? So how does that affect like this other area? So it was pretty cool.
Okay, gotcha. And so when you say you were at this 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off program, would you work weekends as well?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So like
you work every day 12 hours?
Every day for 12 hours, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And then you would just like head home for the 2 weeks, and you were repeating that for the summer?
Yeah.
So you had, what was it, like 8 times that you were there? 4 times that you were there?
Four times, right?
Okay.
Because like I would go once a month basically to work.
Okay, gotcha. How did you like maintain relationships with people who were like around here during that time? Like what was that like?
Honestly, like it was fine. Like a lot of my school friends, like I don't always see them during the week anyways, just because like we hang out on weekends, right? So I think it would kind of feel like to them like maybe I was like away. I don't know, like they just happened to not see me. But when you come back, like whenever I would come back after the 2 weeks, like probably the first 3 or 4 days were just me seeing people. But it wasn't that difficult. Like I have a phone and stuff. Like it is 2 weeks, and it definitely is a long time. But you get to be back for 2 full weeks. Like it's not bad. You can make it work, I think.
Right. You did.
Clearly.
Yeah, clearly. Okay, gotcha. So I guess like moving on from that, you finished that job, and then did you have like another job lined up after that, or were you back to searching?
So I had an I was interviewing for an investment banking job.
Sure. It's wildly not mineral engineering.
It is mineral. So it was this firm, and they do like mining investment banking specifically. So in mining, like you can do the technical role, like kind of what I've been talking about, but a lot of people go into finance, especially in Toronto, because it's like a mining hub for finance and consulting companies and stuff. But yeah, I was going to do an investment banking position with them. And like they wanted to hire me, they sent me a contract, all that. And then I was like, trying to negotiate certain factors of my contract. And then they, just didn't answer me and decided to go with someone else.
Right.
So yeah. So that's kind of why I ended up having that like gap in time, that month and a half between Detour and my next job.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you like found and started that job between when you finished at Detour?
Well, started. Like I had the contract, I hadn't signed it yet. And I was in negotiation with them. And then I was like, okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So both before you started at Detour and just like generally it seems throughout UPY, you were like quite picky with the jobs that you ended up taking. Like I say that, you were like quite selective, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your thought process on that?
Well, okay, with that one job, to be fair, like because it was an investment banking job, it was like crazy hours. Like they wanted me to work like 60 hours a week.
And they just said that outright?
Yes.
Okay.
Which was like, I was like fine with, but I was trying to negotiate like, okay, if I'm working 60 hours a week, I want this salary. Like I want this, I don't know, some other, like whatever I was trying to argue with them for.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much that I was trying to be like crazy picky, but I don't know, like I was just trying to make sure that my contract was fair and that like valued my skills, I guess.
Right. A lot of students don't do that. I know, at least like for myself and like for a lot of people I've talked to, generally when you're given a contract, you're like, yes, like please like sign that right now.
Yeah, totally.
Was that like part of your thought process, or like how did you think about just like negotiation? Because you seem to be significantly more confident in that. Definitely, I was, and that like most people are.
Yeah. Well, obviously that one with that investment banking firm didn't work out, but I did like from that experience learn how to negotiate better. And like for my job with Vale, for example, like I ended up negotiating that contract like successfully and stuff. And I think it's just all about asking for stuff that's reasonable and like taking stock of like what you have to offer and also what you want from the company. So what kind of job they're offering and that kind of thing. And yeah, just going for it, I guess.
So how long would that, I know I'm like digging into this, but I just think that I'm really curious, and I think like a lot of people are, what does that like negotiation process look like? Do they like send you a contract and you say like, I think this would be better, and then you like send them an email back? Like is that kind of what that looks like?
Yeah. A lot of people say like you should probably call and do it in person, but I did mine like via email and it was fine. I just explained like exactly why I wanted something or didn't want something, and I wasn't asking for anything like too crazy. Right. Yeah, it worked out.
Okay. Yeah. So you got your second job at the second company. Which company was that? I'm sorry. I really just don't know these companies, and that's why I'm curious.
Yeah.
So AECON Mining, what was that job? Like, what were you doing?
So that job was, I was a project coordinator. So I was kind of overseeing like this massive like heavy equipment project where you're moving like lots of earth basically. And I was doing like, I was tracking like the loads. I was looking at like equipment productivity. So like how many like buckets was the shovel filling per minute, like stuff like that. Like how productive is your equipment being? And then looking at like day to day, like what's our like project cost versus budget. So where are we gaining on the budget? Where are we losing on the budget and why? And sending out like reports like that to like the VPs and stuff. So that was okay. I worked, it was cool because I got like a company truck and stuff and like a phone and like I had like paid housing and stuff there, which was really nice because Fort Mac's like a super expensive place to live. But the trade-off there was that I was working like 6 days a week with 1 day off, and I was working like 12-hour days. So it was a really, really demanding job, but I got like really good overtime from it. So it was kind of a balance. But yeah, that job was good, but I would say that for me, like for what I want to do in my life, I don't really want to be like a project coordinator. I wanted to get more like design experience and be like more in the field and stuff, because that job I was just like kind of pit-pattering at the computer. So that's why I ended up going to Vale and like making that choice to move from there.
When did you know that you wanted to like move on from that position?
Honestly, like the first week that I was there was really, really hard, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to stick it out because they threw a lot of work at me.
Sure.
And I think I made the decision once I was like competent at what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to like choose to go to a different job because like I found the work difficult or I was lazy. Like I wanted it to be like, I can now do this. Like I know that like I have a really good grasp of what's going on, but I also know that it doesn't interest me.
Right.
And so that's why I made the choice to move, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So how did that, I'm just curious how that worked logistically, because like you were, you know, far from home. You were like, across the country.
So with a lot of those jobs where you like go work for a mining company in Alberta or something, they fly you out and they say they'll fly you back. Mm-hmm. But if you like leave for another job, which is what I did, then they don't fly you back. You have to pay yourself. But,
right. Yeah. Okay. And you went straight from that job to Vale?
No, I signed a contract with Vale and I was really, really overworked. Like I was working like 70 hours a week.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, and so I decided I wanted like a week off at home. So I came home and just like decompressed and then I went to Manitoba.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So this is around like February, March?
I think it was like January, February, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So, and then you got there. I guess before we dig into that, like, what did deciding to like leave a job that like, I guess you thought you liked teach you? Like, what did you get from that?
It was a really hard decision for me because I think I was looking at it like kind of emotionally. Like I was like, oh, I like my coworkers, and like I also was kind of isolated, right? So I didn't have like family and stuff around, so I felt like it was just like a big decision to make, and I didn't really feel like I could talk to my coworkers about it too much because obviously they don't want me to leave. But I think I ended up like calling my dad and stuff and talking to him, and one of the things he told me to do was like to look at it like really as like a business decision, like what factors is the job giving me here that Vale like can give me that's better, like kind of comparing like in terms of salary, in terms of work experience, like how can you use this job as like a stepping stone when you graduate, and like that kind of thing. Like not so much being like, oh, I feel bad and guilty, like more being like what's best for me in terms like in a professional sense. Right. And also like he was saying, like, you know, if at a regular company, like if you find a job that's better, like your coworkers are going to be happy for you. You know, they should be. If the company culture is right, they should be happy that you're pursuing something that's, you know, more valuable to you. So that was like something I took to heart because I was like, yeah, like I found another position that like truly is going to give me the experience that I'm looking for. So why would I stay somewhere where they like want to hold me back, kind of? So I think the lesson is like, I feel like young workers, like myself included, don't really like value themselves enough. Right. Because like they want the job and they want the experience and like, you know, they just want to get out there. But I think it's important to like think about where you're spending your time. And like, is 6 months at this company gonna like really benefit you, or are you gonna like stop learning after two months or something like that? You know. So yeah. Gotcha.
That sounds like a solid decision making process. So on to Vale. Yes. So what were you doing at Vale?
So I did survey. So I was basically underground every day until like 12 or 1 o'clock, and I did like, I don't know how to describe survey to you. Basically, you have this equipment and you use it to mark like where the center line is in a heading, and to like give the miners like reference points. So when they're driving like a heading, like think of it as like a long tunnel underground. Sure. And when they're driving that, like it's hard to get a sense of orientation when you're underground, right? So we mark like the center line on like the back, which is like the ceiling, and then we mark like grade points on the side, which helps them to like slope the heading the way that you want it. So if you want to go forward like 5 meters at a 2% grade, that means you want to slope upwards 2%. So we're putting in markings that help them go straight along the center line so that they follow like the plan, which is kind of like a blueprint of the underground, and also that help them aim like their drills or whatever in that like 2% slope.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're directing the operation.
Yeah. Basically. So you're basically like giving them reference points. So it's doing that. You're doing stuff like an open stope is like if you have a large area where you blasted, like you can't go like it's like a non-entry mining method, let's say, so you can't go in the stope to look at it, so we would put in like expensive like equipment that's kind of like a camera, and you would like feed it into the open stope, like the open hole or whatever, and it would scan the area so that the engineers would have like a solid to work off of to see like what the ground conditions are and like if their blast went according to plan and all those kind of things. So we were gathering like that information underground, and then when I like came above ground, so that's around like 1 or whatever, I would do like importing that data and then putting out like issuing development prints and stuff. So that's where you're like showing where those grade plugs and centerline markings that you made that day are, and like how the miners should proceed. So should they go 10 meters, 5 meters, like when should they call for new line and grade, like that kind of stuff. And then so that was like kind of my day to day, and then in between that I would like push for more work from like the planning engineers, so doing like more design projects. So I did like a sump hole design project. I did like,
so like, what's that, for example?
So like the sump hole design was like basically in the mine they make sumps, which is like where you want your water to flow, because it's very easy to flood, right? So they want to drain the water to like a certain area, and this sump for whatever reason was like, I guess its capacity wasn't big enough, so it was kind of overflowing, so they wanted like a drill hole from one sump to the sump on the level below. And like that sounds pretty simple, but like when you're drilling and stuff, like there's certain things you have to take into account, like whether or not the equipment that you need to drill can fit in the drift, like what orientation you want it to drill at, like what's the dip, what's the strike, like there's all this like, I guess, geometry to it. And so like I did like a design project around that where I just like designed a sump hole. And some other stuff, like I got to do, you know, that like open stope stuff that I was talking about.
Just for the benefit of myself and other people listening, what is a stope?
A stope, it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like when you're mining, you take out a big chunk of rock.
Sure.
And now it's an open stope.
Okay.
It's just like the open space, like where there used to be rock, like you like mined that area.
The hole.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I got to like that open stope like method that I was talking about. I got to like design a block from that. So you get like a geology block model, and then you like analyze it and you say like, okay, what's the best angle to like make my shape that I'm gonna blast out to get like the highest recovery and the lowest dilution. Dilution's like when you have like a lot of rock. It's like dilution's like your ratio of like rock to ore material.
Right.
And so like I got to do stuff like that, and there's a lot of like optimization factors in there, like with your angle and I don't know, the number of like I don't know, drill holes that you put in and stuff. So that was cool. That was really good like design experience, I think, to get as like as a student and stuff.
I mean, that sounds very like start to end. That sounds like a very holistic design experience. Like you weren't designing this one little thing. Like that was a big part of
that was probably like the biggest thing that I got to do, which was really cool. But it's kind of hard to explain it without like pictures or like if you don't have a context of what I'm talking about.
We'll post those. That's all good. So one thing I'm curious about, are these things you learned in school?
I mean, like some stuff, I guess. Like you learn about like mining methods and stuff. And I think we're taking an underground course next semester, which I think that the underground course that we should take should be in like third year. Like I don't know why it's at the end of fourth year. I actually think that's a big mistake on my program's part. But I think that like covers some of that stuff a little bit more. But we did take like a general underground mining course in third year, and it's more like an overview of what's going on. So like like you learn about like the open stope mining methods, but like some of the specifics of what I learned, like you don't really see. Plus like you're using programs and stuff you don't use. So I use Vulcan, which is a mine design software that like...
It's a great name for a mine design software. That is fantastic.
But yeah, it's super popular in industry, and it's really good that I have like such a good grasp of using it, like just for when I graduate, to be able to like put that on my resume and talk about it in an interview and stuff.
Is this? I know like a lot of industries, like software is kind of applied across it. Is that the case in mining? Like would Vulcan or something like that be like a commonly used software?
Like there's several softwares, that do the same thing. So there's like Surpack, MineSite, whittle, Vulcan, like all these different things that do slightly different things. I think that there are some like design softwares that people use more for like open pit versus underground. And then there's also scheduling software. So like Deswick is a scheduling software that like helps you. I don't know. There's a lot of scheduling in mining.
Is it mining specific?
Yeah,
it's a mining specific scheduling software.
Yeah, like like you kind of need like mining specific software if you want to apply it right, because it's just different.
It just seems like it's
just
its own world. Yeah. So I mean, on that front, you mentioned that you kind of had the high level concepts from school, but a lot of the stuff was stuff that you learned on the job. You're also talking about, so you're saying words like water direction and blast, and like these are very much like real things that are happening to real people, which sounds like an oversimplification, but I'm in industrial engineering, so like for me, like the worst thing that can happen, like when I'm designing an interface, is somebody doesn't like it. Versus it sounds like the stakes are higher for the work that you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Somebody could get really hurt.
Well, right. So was that ever something that you were thinking about, like when you were doing the work?
Yeah, but I feel like that's a fear like for like civil engineers too. Like somebody goes on your bridge and it breaks or whatever.
Sure.
But like Canada has like pretty strict like mining like rules and protocols. Like most of the companies here are like well developed. Like they have like certain standards. They're like, oh, your toe spacing should be 8 feet. Like they'll tell you, and you get a lot of guidance from like senior engineers. Like they know that you don't really have like an idea of what you're doing right out of school. So there's a lot of training there. And also like the way it works is like you make your print or your design, and then an engineer looks at it and they have to sign off on it and they'll make corrections. And then you'll give it to like a senior engineer or like somebody like that's up at that level, and they'll have to like approve the design. Right. So
there are many levels of...
I wasn't afraid.
Okay, good. Yeah. That's awesome. How long do you think it took, like at Vale or like at, that, like the gold mining job, before you felt like, oh, I can independently operate? Like how steep would you say the learning curve was?
The learning curve at Vale was like pretty intense. It wasn't that long. It was like probably like 2 months-ish, but like survey was hard to learn just because like it's not really like a lot of people who come to university, like you're like academic, right? But a lot of work in mining is hands-on. Like you're literally underground, like you're setting up the equipment. Like I had trouble at first, like doing things like I had to like drill into the wall. Like I'm not that strong. Like stuff like that, or like even just like
that's why they have the gym.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Even like setting up like the survey gun and leveling it, like it's not difficult, but it's it takes practice, I guess. And like some people are naturally like obviously going to be better at that than others. So like that was kind of intense. And also like you said, it's like a whole different world. So there's all this stuff you're learning in terms of like safety. Like I had never been to an underground mine before, so like I didn't even know how it was set up. Like I had to learn how to like drive like a minecat, which is kind of like a Jeep underground.
That is so cool.
I had to learn how to like drive that on the ramp and like know like, okay, because like on the ramp there's just like it's just one road. Okay. And you have two-way traffic, right? So you have to like, if like a huge haul truck is coming towards you, you have to back up and like go into a side drift. So stuff like that was scary for me, and like knowing what to do in that situation. And then also like learning Vulcan was like a pretty big challenge right at the beginning because like I'd never used the software before. But after like probably 2 months and like I got a lot of support and stuff too. Like I think I was fine. Like I learned pretty quick. I'd say my time at Detour was a little bit. The learning curve wasn't as steep because I was doing more like sampling work and stuff and data analysis, which like, I've been in a lab before, like I've done data analysis, like that's not too out of the realm from like my studies, but like really being in the field, like at an underground mine was definitely more of a learning curve, but I really liked it, so.
Gotcha. What are these the kinds of jobs that you think you'd come back to?
Yeah, I think I want to do like, when I graduate, I want to do like mine planning for an underground mine. I'm even doing like my thesis on underground mining now, so like it's definitely like I really, really liked it, so yeah.
Okay. Was it what you imagined it would be when you first kind of went into mineral engineering? Like you were mentioning a couple of things that you had in mind.
Honestly, I don't think anyone, well, I guess it's a broad statement, but I don't think you truly have an idea of like what mining engineering is when you first come to the program, because like how could you if you're from Toronto, like
sure,
you know, you've never really been to the mine. But I think the base like things that I liked about it, like how it's like a little bit more adventurous, like I don't know, like it's hands-on, like all those things, that stuff that I liked about it, combined with like the analytical and problem solving from like any engineering,
right,
that all like lined up. And so
yeah, because it sounds like very much engineering, but also like you're definitely in like a giant like underground structure, like that's adventurous doesn't start like.
But like what's cool about it is like you can do that kind of work, like where you're like underground, you're doing the planning, whatever, and then like after 5 years, like if you decide you want to do like maybe a more high level role, or you want to work like in an office or something, like you can go do mining consulting, or you can like, I don't know, just like work for corporate for the company that you're working at. So you don't have to like just work in the mine your whole life. You can, and lots of people do, but there's options. So I like that.
Right, you could take on like a more conventional engineering job like when that starts making sense. Okay. Were there things that you wished you were taught before going on the job? Like you mentioned that like underground mining is something that you wish was taught earlier because like you did that.
Just like the technical aspects of it, but I just think that like you shouldn't be a new graduate who just learned about like the specifics of like underground mining like a month ago. You know, like I feel like it should be introduced into the program much earlier, and then I think that there should be more high level courses that are taught like in your 4th year, rather than like an underground like rock mechanics course, you know?
So are the courses that are generally taught more high level?
It's just like there's courses like in your 2nd year you take like introduction to the resource industry, which is like a good course because you like get like a broad overview of like the geology, mining, like all that stuff. But I think like we've been saying, like mining's like a whole other world. Like they spend a lot of time giving us courses that like introduce you to stuff, which is good. But like personally, like I would have preferred to like take like a high level technical course earlier. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
But like I guess it's just that like you don't have background knowledge about mining, I guess.
Right.
So they can't just like, or they feel that they can't just like give you this course specifically on underground mining. They have to have like one before that's like more general and more like high level, I guess.
Right, and it also sounds like they'd rather have like the companies kind of train you in that, and once you have that context going into 4th year, be like, okay, remember that thing you did? This is the academic version.
Yeah, they could never like actually teach you everything that you learn on the job. Like it just, like every company does stuff differently, like every ore body is different, like the conditions are different, right?
Sure.
So, like I see like why they run it that way, but
and
it's just a personal opinion that we should have that course earlier.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think there could be hands-on things. Like you've got the civil engineering lab in Galbraith, right? You could have a massive hole under pretty much any building, and I think that would be just fine. There's no more real estate there.
Perfect.
I just think there are opportunities that can be pitched, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So did the 16 months that you kind of spend across these companies change what you think you'd be focusing on in 4th year? Like you mentioned that you're doing a thesis in underground mining. Like were any of the decisions you made about 4th year affected by your work experience?
Yeah, so like before I went for PY, I was like, oh, I want to do mining, but like I didn't really know what I wanted to do, which you can tell kind of from my PY year. Like I did a little bit of everything. I did metallurgy, I did like project management, and then I did like legit like underground mining.
You were all over.
Yeah. So I was trying to like, I guess like figure out like what exactly I wanted before I had to like lock myself into like a fixed term, right? But it definitely influenced like how I selected my courses come 4th year, just because like looking at my technical electives, like I didn't see as much stuff that like focus on underground, and I really like underground mining. So I decided, you know, like I want to learn more about this subject. Like I think this is like the area I want to work in, like when I graduate and stuff. So like that had me reach out to a professor who like does a lot of work with like tunneling and underground stuff, and now I'm doing my thesis with that. But if I hadn't done a PY, I don't think I would have known that like, oh, I really like underground. Like, I think it's super cool. Like I probably would have just taken a generic, technical elective, I guess. So, yeah.
What makes you really like underground mining? Like, what was it about it?
I just think it's really, really complicated, you know? Like, like there's so many things, like how do you get like water underground? How do you get electricity underground? How do you get like, how do you account for like these huge pieces of equipment that are like letting off gas underground? Like how do you design in a way that's gonna be like better for when there's like a fire or an emergency underground? And I liked that. And I really liked how like you were like, from what I saw of like the mine planners, like when they were like designing a block, like you're making the shape and then you're like deciding where your drill holes go and you're like looking at the dimensions and you're doing this analysis to see like which shape and which angle and which thing is going to give me like the best recovery and like what's actually feasible. And like just in mining in general, like not underground specific, but I like the interplay of like operators, like blue collar workers basically, like with the engineers and stuff. Like they bring a lot of like really good practical experience, and if you can build like a good relationship with operations, it's really good too. So I just like that dynamic. Just it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever like have a feeling like when you were down there, I'm just like I literally can't believe that I'm currently working on this?
Yeah, definitely. Like I remember my first day underground. It was so cool because I was like in that underground Jeep I was talking about, and I was like going down the ramp, and it's pitch black, right? Like you can't see anything, and I just had like the bright lights, obviously, like of the vehicle, and it was just like lighting up the ramp as we were going, and it kind of like zigzags a little, and it's a little bumpy because it's rough underground, like it's not like a nice road. And I was like, this is like a roller coaster. This is so cool. Like I can't believe I'm here. So that was definitely cool. Yeah, it's just cool. It's just like a big structure. I don't know. I just think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we've used the phrase "whole other world." It sounds like that's now that you talk about it, that's something that I now want to see. You lived in 3 different places in kind of rapid succession, like places that weren't Toronto. Did you think that you got better at kind of like adapting to new places?
I think that I got like more independent for sure. I definitely like, because I was like taken away from some of the stuff I do in Toronto all the time, like, you know, going to a club or going to a coffee shop or whatever, I picked up more hobbies. And I think I spent more quality time with people because like you don't have as much to do. So like you hang out together and you make activities, right?
Right.
And I also think that I learned how to tone down my Toronto a little bit when I'm in like a remote
Explain what that means, because I'm from here and I don't know what that means, and I think I should.
I don't really know how to describe it. Like, it's just, they just look at, like, you know, I always got made fun of for being from Toronto. You're just like a city girl or like a city guy. Like, you dress differently, you talk differently, like, you even think differently about certain issues. It's not an accent. I don't think it's an accent. It's just like, you just have a very different life. Like, you know, like it's different access to resources, different day-to-day life, you know? And yeah.
Right. So your coworkers would be like, Olivia, you're Toronto, Sean?
They're like, you're the Toronto.
Were they mostly from around there?
Fort Mac people are not. It's mostly like a lot of newfies actually work in Fort Mac. Like they fly in. People like from Alberta and stuff, and people from Ontario. Like Fort Mac is really like a lot of people from all over Canada go to. For Thompson, which is Manitoba, that one was like all people from Thompson, a couple people from like Saskatchewan, like mostly the people who come in that are from out of province are usually like the engineers. And then like myself, one of the other co-op students was from like Vancouver and stuff, but yeah, in general, it's like locals plus like whoever like came from, you know, an engineering background and moved here.
Right. I mean, that sounds like kind of the opposite of a lot of what happens with like usual big companies, where like people come from all over to like a city to work at that company.
Well, I think the thing is like with mining, like you're gonna have like a technical staff, but the size of the technical staff is like very, very small compared to like the operators. So like the main population in Thompson is the drillers and like the haul truck drivers. Like it's not really the engineers. Right. There's like 10 of you and like 30 of them on one shift, right?
Gotcha. Right.
Or more. But yeah. So I think that's why it's like more locals and stuff, right? And it's really, really good money. So like people grow up there and then they see this job where you make like 120K like when you're like 19.
Right.
Like not obviously, but a lot of them choose to stay. So that's kind of what
that makes a lot of sense. It makes so many sense. It makes dollars. So write that one down.
Moving to Manitoba.
I mean, I think that just about wraps up like everything that I kind of wanted to ask you. Was there anything else that you wanted to say?
Do PY.
Do PY?
It's good for you. No, it's good to take a break from school. And I think like I said, I picked up like a lot more hobbies, and like I also think like anyone who's like considering moving away for PY, like I really think the experience of moving away from home is great. Like I kind of grew up near Toronto, right? I'm from the GTA, so like I hadn't really like gone by myself for like 8 months before or something. And that really like, I think I grew up a lot and like kind of figure out my life a lot more. So if anyone's looking for some, I don't know, personal development, I definitely recommend like taking a job away for a year. Yeah.
And just like as a thing that's independently valuable from the job itself, like the fact that it's
like
not where home is.
Yeah, exactly. And like when you meet new people, you do new things. Like for example, like I played Dungeons and Dragons while I was in Manitoba, and that was like never something I would have done in Toronto.
Did you know what it was?
I knew what it was, but I was like, what is this? But like I didn't truly know like what the game was about, like the role play and stuff. But I had a lot of fun.
You liked it?
Yeah, it was good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a big fan of RPGs, so I'm like glad to hear that. Yeah. Arcady and I definitely put on for that community. All right. Well, on that note, Olivia, thank you for talking to us. Thank you for repping Min hard.
Thank you.
A game job. That's it for this episode of That Thing I Did for a Year. We'll see you next time.